And welcome to Rugby Through the Leagues podcast. We want to keep shining a light on rugby that is not shown in the mainstream media. I'm Carl. Thanks for joining us on the next instalment of the Rugby Through the Leagues podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the pod and keep in touch with us on our social media platforms. We have some amazing guests lined up in the coming weeks and we really don't want you to miss out on them. It was another great weekend of rugby. There was the spectacle of the Prem final, which didn't disappoint on the pitch as always. The URC quarterfinals were in full swing, setting up some pretty tasty semi-finals between the Bulls and Leinster, and then Munster host Glasgow. In the Rugby Asia Championship, Malaysia hosted Hong Kong China, but suffered a 70-6 defeat to a dominant Hong Kong China side. UAE hosted South Korea this weekend and pulled off another shock in the Rugby Asia Championship, with South Korea being their own downfall in losing in 36-32 UAE win. The PWR semi-finals put on another spectacle with a nice local derby being set up for the final between Gloucester, Hartpury and Bristol. Rugby Europe Championship Sevens tournaments were in full swing this weekend. We started off in Croatia with some amazing results, and with the women's tournament being won by Poland after beating France in the final. The men's tournament ended with France beating Ireland. Over in Belgrade, the Rugby Europe Conference 1 division was another sevens tournament, with Norway beating Denmark in the final, in the men's final, and in the women's, Moldova won 24-10 over Slovakia. Don't forget to catch up on these tournaments on rugbyeurope.tv, and the Rugby Asia Championship games are still on YouTube, so they're well worth a watch. This weekend coming up, we've got another great weekend of rugby. We'll be popping on down to the Spain women's against Canada, which is down at La Villa in near Alicante. So we'll be heading down there to watch the game and get some footage up on our socials, show how a Spanish international game goes about. The Seventh Circuit continues for Rugby Europe, with their Conference 2 division being played in Bar in Montenegro. The Rugby Europe Trophy tournament will be being played in Zagreb in Croatia this weekend too. Super Rugby semi-finals will also be taking place, with the Blues against the Brumbies and the Hurricanes against the Chiefs. So two great games there to start your weekend off if you're a nice early bird. However, we now move on to this week's podcast. So this week's podcast, we've got a great interview from Mark Witcher, who is a one-club man over at Portsmouth Rugby Club. He played throughout the senior setup all the way through. He managed to then move into coaching and was a coach for the Portsmouth Valkyries women's team, who helped them put them on a massive trajectory with an unbeaten season thrown in the mix. He then became head coach of Hampshire Women's alongside that. He is still a huge advocate for the game. He's moved back into the men's game at the minute as an assistant coach at Portsmouth, but his passion for the women's game can still be seen and heard throughout this interview. So this one did really go on for hours. I know I keep saying it, but this one pretty much did. Mark's a great guest, full of knowledge, full of rugby passion. It was an absolute blast. I probably spent more time editing this one down, but what a guest, what a pod. Take a listen. Make sure you stick through to the end because it's a belter.
Well, we've got Mark Witcher on, the man, the myth, the legend of the rugby within the women's game in Portsmouth and Hampshire. Obviously now assistant coach over at Portsmouth Rugby Club. Is that correct with the men's?
Yeah.
From what I know and what I understand of where you've been and what we've got a really good pod to listen to today, mate. So thank you so much for your time. Just great to get you on. We'll start off with your rugby journey, mate, if you're willing to sort of have a little run through, clue everyone in of what you've done, where you've been, and then we can start going through the usual questions.
Yeah, no, of course. It's quite easy for me because one club man and all those cliches. But I honestly take it right back to under 14s. I went to a naval boarding school, so if anyone from the Portsmouth area knows Holbrook, then they'll know that trip up to there. And
that's in Ipswich. Is that the Ipswich one?
That's right. Yeah, just south of Ipswich. So the Royal Hospital School. It was either cross country or rugby up there for me. So started that, got back down. Mum and Dad lived in Cosham, and literally opened Yellow Pages, and Portsmouth Rugby Club was the nearest, because I had to get my bike to get there, and kind of never looked back, and played right through the club in ones, and was lucky enough to captain the twos and the vets, and I've been there all my life. And a few years back, same as a lot of guys, really quick text message with can you come and help out? There's the coach needs a spare pair of hands, and turned up one night at the Valkyries, and that's 7-8 years ago, and was there for 6 years, and we had a really good time. And then we were lucky enough as well that I got involved with Hampshire as the assistant coach, and then was involved as head coach as well, and now, just as I say, back with the men for the last year as assistant coach, and hopefully pushing through to this season as well.
Yeah, brilliant. So obviously Portsmouth, well-established club in the local area, got a really decent clubhouse, got fairly easy access to it as well. And I've teed yourself up with a bit of a question a bit later on about it. The ones what division are they sort of battling in around now? Because they're sort of a fairly sturdy team within that division now.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've all been rejigged, and it wouldn't surprise me if they're rejigged again. But I think it's counties one they call it now. So there's still a few recognisable teams in there that we've been been come up against for quite a few seasons, and I think we finished 5th this season, so we're well established in that league. And there was some really close. I sort of looked at the ones and the twos this year, and actually, apart from a couple of sort of runaway winners, if you like, or runaway results. A lot of the results are fairly close, which shows that the leagues are kind of about right. You weren't getting lots of silly results.
That was the same division as Petersfield, isn't it? So Petersfield just won that league from you guys. Obviously, they've done a big push this season to get out of that league, and dominated as well, to be fair to them, haven't they? So they've done. Obviously, we had Liam on the pod the other week. And they've got big plans down at Petersfield. They've got a really good setup as well. Portsmouth have got that platform. Have they got 3 or 4 teams still? Because when I was back over there, they had a 4th team rucking around as and when.
It's one. They're putting 3 teams out. I would say that the 3rd team is the one that kind of we're putting a lot of effort in at the moment, because they're in a league. The feedback is that those lads want more rugby, and that's what we've got to give them. The ones and twos is kind of like set; their leagues are pretty set. The 3rd team league, I think they're in counties 3, I think, maybe even 4. The games don't come as thick and fast, and that's something we've got to look at this season, really, for player retention. If they're not playing, then they find other things to do at the weekend, don't they?
That's it. And then you've obviously got a really good vets team as well over there at Portsmouth.
Yeah, and again, it's cyclical, So I was lucky that when I skippered it, we'd all kind of just come out of the ones and twos, still keen for rugby. Our bodies were still fit, and our minds were still capable, and it was a pleasure. We even noticed that we were playing against sides that were getting quicker than us, and rugby was getting harder again. But we're just sort of filling that void again now. So the younger vets, if you like, are coming through again. And
because what's the cut-off? Is it 30? Is it 36?
35.
35.
Over 35s. So it's you look at like great final this year with Havant and Tots, and it's kind of like they've stayed together and they've got the younger vets coming through, and that way then it's not only is it good, but it's one of the best supported sides within the club from us and other teams as well. But it's important because people don't want to walk away and don't want to give up rugby.
No, not at all. And then obviously the Valkyries going great guns, done really well. Obviously since you stepped aside still as well, so great platform there. What's the youth system like over at Portsmouth? I haven't really been involved. Is there much of a tots and Colts system going through? Or
there is. I think I just saw a message actually a few days ago. I think they take them from under 4s. Which was younger than I thought it was, and it goes right through. And actually, That's something that we've identified this year, that senior coaches are going to pick them up from a slightly younger age, and maybe transition coaches kind of like a bit of a buzz around the RFU, I suppose. But make that link a little bit tighter between the juniors and seniors. But the actual mini and junior setup is really, really well represented, well supported. I think they found from COVID actually staggering the times on a Sunday gave them more pitch allocation, and that's allowed them to probably get more people down there, and it's just brilliant. I mean, I've always admired all the local clubs. Their junior setups have always seemed pretty good, and it's given me an opportunity to look at ours. So it's definitely it's thriving.
Yeah, because I was speaking to a Farnham player on the pod that's coming out Friday, where the Nags Ed Birch is on. He said they've got 1,000 kids in the youth setup at Farnham, which is unreal. That is a lot.
It's a beast. I don't know how do you manage that. They
got them through mini youth as well. So apparently they've got them in 2 and 3 year olds. As long as they can bumble around and pick a ball up, they've got a set up ready to bring them through. It's just unreal. That's just phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think it captures everybody. If you've got if you've got a 6 or 7 year old player and they've got a 2 or 3 year old, brother or sister, and now they can be involved.
Yeah,
that's win-win. The parents can have them both down there. And I mean, I know a couple of guys that used to play at Farnham, and I saw their setup through the women's setup as well. And they're definitely another club that are going great guns. I mean, their catchment area is slightly different again, but you've got to push it. You've got to push yourself to make it work. You can't just you can't expect them to come to you. So no, that's brilliant to hear that.
So as you said in your rugby journey, obviously rocking around in the 1s and 2s as the one club man for Portsmouth. Who did you play with that went on to make it, and was it obvious? Yeah,
I mean, one of them was a long time ago, and it was obvious. He was a different class. So there was a guy called Oscar Wingham, and I had to sort of dig deep back into the archives a little bit, and he went to Leicester. This is pre-professional era, and absolute superstar of an open side. And the best accolade I can give you about him is that the only reason he didn't start for Leicester was that Neil Back was the open side for them, and that's
that's big shoes to try and move around unless he's got crocked. That's
and I didn't know. So Oscar was in, I think, my last years of Colts going on, but I remember how good he was. A bit sort of, and then a guy called Brendan Tracy. He'll like a little shout out. He went to Clifton. I think that because we were kind of like we sort of just pre-pro era, I suppose. It's that kind of like other things got in the way, I suppose. Ambition itself wasn't enough. So Brendan absolutely. But there was a couple of guys that I played with that were a couple of Kiwi boys, and they come over, and a guy called Brad Christensen. I was skipping the 2s at the time, and it's only a little story that I'd say to him. So we had this chat, and I was told that this 24, 25-year-old Kiwi was coming over, hoping to play number 8 for the Wands, but he's going to come and play for Pompey 2s against Bognor 2s that day. So I pick him up, and he's tall, he's athletic, he's handsome, he's everything I wish I was, and we play this game, and it's just one of these days where everybody gets their hands on the ball. They're 8 picking up, and Brad's just folding them up every time. And I mate, just stop. I just said to Brad, I went, you got to stop doing it. And I said to their 8, mate, you just got to stop doing this. Like, he's going to do it for fun. And he mentioned in the way back, I said, what level you played at in New Zealand then? And it was kind of like, I think it might have changed now, but it's kind of like, it was called like the Intermediate Cup, or it was like the NPC Cup, and it was one step away from being selected for the Super 12s, I think it was then. And, this guy was a superstar. Him and a guy called Ben Stewart was the other guy, centre, and they were just folding. It brought Pompey on at the time. We were lucky enough to play with them, and I don't think they're playing anymore, but that was, those guys were. Brendan was my Brendan and Oscar were my eras, and as I say, Neil Back stopped Oscar. That was his only downside.
Imagine that, turning up at Bognor 2s, which is a little trip anyway, isn't it? So, and then you've got 2 Kiwi ringers that are just folding people up like deck chairs.
I was trying to explain to him though. I was like, look, it's a local side. Bognor, dirty's the wrong word. They're a bit handy. We always have a little bit of a game, bit of fun with them, and
they love it. They love a scrap, don't they, Bognor? They're always game.
And it's either that or their pitches were always, garbage in it. But I meant that, endearing, in an endearing way. And this guy turned out had change rooms, you can imagine, and it's just, it was funny. But we scored a try. I promise you, from our 5 metre line to their try line, everybody touched the ball. It was like, I want to be part of his gang. It was just, it was fun. But do you know what? They stayed over for a couple of years, and they threw themselves into that club. They were at every social. They were, it was brilliant. It was everything about, you get the tourist. It's changed, I guess, a little bit now, but you get these lads coming over just for a couple of years on a visa, having a bit of a laugh, seeing a bit of rugby elsewhere. They could have gone higher up, and I don't know. Maybe we just replied to their emails at the right time, but there was no money. Helped them out with digs and push them in the right direction of a job, but it was it was funny to see, and it made it a bit easier for me as an older, less wiser one, But yeah, it's good fun.
Did he finally make it into the ones, or did you just tell everyone he was dog shit to keep him around in the twos?
Just kept the number to myself. That was it, mate. It wasn't. Yeah, straight, mate. And you know what?
Never turned up. Never turned up.
That was it. Yeah, that was it. That's absolute liberty. It was absolute liberty. Yeah, him and Ben. They were both here at the same time. Which people that are still old enough that were at the. Still at the club, talk about them fondly, because it was just, they seem to sometimes have a competition with each other, just about like who could hit the hardest. And then you're like, I want to have a go at that. And, somebody else, it was good. It was good times. As I say, it was, you don't get people like that come through all the time, that not only, they're not just in it for themselves, but they were class. And all the time we're just like, I know that a couple of national 2 clubs had a little sniff on them after their first year, and we're kind of like, you don't want to go there, mate. It's horrible in the winter. Just stay on the sunny south coast, kind of thing.
And as you said, they must have brought everyone else's level up as well, because they saw them doing it. Like, oh, actually, I want to have a go, see if I can do that. And
I think it comes.
It's great to see.
I think it just comes naturally for them as well. It's just kind of like, or fun, like, oh, I'm just playing for fun. Let's have a bit of fun. And when we weren't their level. I think we might have been London 1 or 2 then. So it was a couple of leagues higher than we are now. But it was just, they were playing for fun, and they were just good, which made it a bit easier for them.
So next one then, who did you play with that didn't go on to make it but should have? And if there's a good story around it, let's try and fluff it up a little bit.
So this is the hardest one, because how many people do I offend all in one go?
Yeah.
There's no real.
Fuck it. Let's push them all under the bus. Let's go.
Yeah. There's no real stories about why they didn't or anything. Maybe it's quite bland, but the person that I played with that I thought was the most naturally gifted player, he was Welsh. That was his only downside. Was a guy called Matt Brono, who hopefully he's heard around. He's known around the county without a doubt. And when I was lucky enough to play with him the first time round, I can tell you the story about how he kept me out of the side. But just naturally gifted, just glided and then stepped when he wanted to. He went to Havant, who were probably just pushing above Portsmouth at the time, but he came back and enjoyed his rugby with the vets, and it was always, he looked old enough to be everybody's granddad, but he soon given the ball, and these nippers were chasing his tail, which was good. But I think with Matt, it was just it was work. But the story about him is that I think Brian Saunders was our head coach at the time, and Matt came back from Havant and was starting at 13, I think, or wing, and he basically come back and took my shirt straight away. And I just turned around to Brian and said to him, I said, I was full of beans, eager, and it's like, mate, how do I get my shirt back? And he just said, be better than him. And I said, well, I might just go and find another position. And that. So I said that I agreed that my communication skills are better than his, but that wasn't a selling point for the coaches. But, so Matt was work. He's a teacher, and he's a cracking bloke. But I felt that certainly, for backs easily, I think he was the best player that I ever played with. But just the other guy that I really, really thought should have pushed on was a guy called Rich Herring. Just in the same stature as Neil Back, really. A bit small in stature, really good defensively, great ball carrier, and could have pushed on. And do you know what? I'm don't want to speak out of turn and say this for him, but I think he just really enjoyed playing with his mates. I'm sure that it got banded around him going elsewhere, and so much so that I think that he lives sort of Peter's away now, and every so often their vets have got to run out, and he goes and has a run out. So I just don't think. Again, it was a different era. Sounds a little bit, cliche.
No, I think,
do you know what I mean?
think as you said earlier, I think down to the professional game coming in so late, probably around that, you probably lost a lot of players that coulda, woulda, should have been in and around the academy systems if they were now. They had the ability to be banding around in that pro level, but they never got picked up early, so they already had a job. They already had the commitments of life. Then the pro sort of piece come around, and those players had already missed that opportunity, so they probably thought, I might as well carry on playing with my mates. I enjoy it. I know I can get pissed every Saturday. I get to go away, go play rugby with my mates. Job done. I don't need to worry about all the other stress. There wasn't that development probably.
I think you're right, but as another good mate of mine, Tom Radbourne, was an outstanding second row, and I think went up to Newbury when they were. I think Newbury were Nat 1 at the time, maybe Nat 2. I don't want to do him a disservice, but it was just he was a good player. It wasn't necessarily about big bucks at the time, and it was. I think that's players still play now because they want to.
Yeah.
I just think that you can come a little bit lower down the leagues and start earning money now, whereas I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit with the women's setup. Maybe not right away down, but and that if you're not picked up early enough and it's not clear that you're absolutely going to fly with it, then what are lads looking to do it for? And for me, Rich was just absolutely. There's a lot of guys actually that I was lucky to play with, and it'd be interesting now to hear why they didn't. But for me, honestly, and when we meet up now, with Rich, I just think that he just genuinely enjoyed playing and having a laugh with his mates, and he was of an era where there was probably 6 or 7 of them, all the same, all exactly the same age, all came through at the same time, and that that makes a difference. It's not just like he's a nipper coming to an older side or an old head. He was right in amongst it, having a laugh with his mates. So it was an interesting one to think about. That was a real. Who could? I know if there's a couple of people I know now, and I won't mention their names. If they see this podcast, which I will send their way, I'll bet they message me saying, "Oh, why didn't you say me? Why didn't you say me?" It'll be a conversation for another time.
Yeah, that's it. Well, we might get episode version 2 out. We'll be able to name drop them or get them on.
Edited, that's it.
As you mentioned, obviously you were captain of the twos and the vets at Portsmouth. Was that correct?
Yeah.
A little birdie told me that you had one hell of a season at captains of the twos with a very sizable points average at the end of the season. Is that correct?
We were lucky, 1,000 point season, but it was it wasn't quite invincible. Honesty and transparency is haven't beat us in a friendly the first game of the season. I'll never forget it. It ruined the polo shirts, but it goes sort of back to like that brotherhood and that camaraderie, because we were lucky that a lot of the 1s and 2s games were away together. So you travel off to wherever on a coach together, but there was loads of people at training, and the 1s wanted to know how the 2s were getting on, and the 2s, same with the 1s, and we were training hard, we were playing hard, but having fun as well, and it just clicked, and I've never quite looked to see how many players played, but we had, there was definitely a consistency of 10 core players playing week in, week out, but the competition was there, and turning up and turning over a few first teams was quite good to see, but we were really well supported by the club, and it was just one of those years, just one of those years that kind of went right, and it made it even better, because hopefully that little bird told you that I wasn't in the end of season photograph because I wasn't there for it. So,
no, that little bird didn't tell me that one, but he told me something to do with something else in a second. So,
okay, but I am So the captain insert Mark Witcher. So bloody brilliant, the best season that we could have had, and didn't make the team photo.
That little birdie also told me apparently you've got a claim for the quickest yellow card probably ever recorded. The little birdie said that you cheated. You come on 30 seconds later, you were yellow carded off the lines.
For the what? It was a communal yellow card, and came on. I told the ref I was deceptively fast. I didn't think I was offside, but come out in the middle of the park, put a tackle in, and the ref carded me for a communal yellow card. A bit harsh, I thought.
30 seconds in, you got to love that.
I think it might have been quicker than that, It depends.
Was it?
Probably was, yeah.
Brilliant.
We haven't worked with your little bird later on.
It was probably the little bird that pushed you. He probably pushed you in front of it.
I was deceptively quicker many moons ago, but yeah, I probably had to jump on the back of the scrum, I reckon.
So obviously onto the coaching then. You've had a pretty amazing time at Portsmouth and Hampshire. Probably saw some great players coming through. Who did you coach that went on to make it? And was it obvious?
So there's some cracking players. There's three. I'm going to leave out the blokes because I've only had a sort of season with them, and I think it would be unfair, really. There are some really good players there, actually, and there are some guys that I think that can push on. But there's a girl that came down to us. So a girl called Abby Harding, played at Sarries, moved to Hayling Island with her job, and just turned up. She was in the military, turned up, and was different class, and had announced that I think it was 7-8 weeks before she just had a baby, and I was like, "You ain't playing yet." My wife's a midwife, so I was like, "I need to go and talk to her. You ain't playing yet," and this was all new to me, and so I think after about 10 or 12 weeks, I think she was happy, and we were happy, and she was like, I'm going to say like. A consummate professional was like a bit of a cliche, but she come down and she just put it about. But she was helping the people around her. Like she'd been around, some of England's best, and we were really lucky to have her. So Abby Harding had already done it, and stayed with us for quite a few seasons, and representing the RAF, brilliant player. But just for everything she brought to us, so I learned a lot off her. Opposite direction, her name's Makeda Lewis, and she's up at Quins now. And not quite had a big break with them, but and they're putting. She's on loan. I think she went on loan to London Irish this year, but would score tries for fun for us.
Really,
bit of boxing. Played fullback for us in the hope that players would kick the ball to her. Rapid. I think she made the Jamaican national 7 squad. Actually, I'm doing her a disservice.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So
that's not a bad rock out, is it?
Yeah, there you go. I just sorry about that, Cookie. So she, and she's still learning. She's still playing a trade. So we got her at quite a young age, and so she pushed on. She went up to Wasp, but unfortunately, what happened with them? She's at Quins now, and hopefully she's being looked after and being mentored in the way that she'll get a chance. And I've told her that we've been up to watch Quins a few times and always meet her, and but she doesn't forget Portsmouth as well. So she's grounded. She's come back down and done a bit of coaching, I know, and she's keen to do some more. And she will be class, and I hope that she does get her opportunity. But
brilliant.
Yeah, they're the two for me that really stood out.
Brilliant. And then, who did you coach that could have gone on further but didn't?
All of them. They had rubbish coaches. Do you know what? There are quite a few, and it's that sort of element of success in the women's game is not difficult to judge, and you don't take anything away from any of them. So, we had a girl, Chloe, that went up to Bath, and I know that she's doing well up there. But for me, I'll pick 2 out, and one of them was girl called Sophie Roseman, was already playing. She was a big, larger than life, like number 8, ball carrier, no ex-Navy, no nonsense. But she didn't carry the side. The players lifted their game. If they saw her name on the team sheet, and I sold my soul to her a few. You owe me a few, actually, Sophie. I sold my soul to her a few times, mate, just to get her playing. Like, you're only playing the first half. I'm going out tonight. Yeah, you're only playing the first. Is she hell? I'll drive you there and back, or whatever it was. Whatever I know you're coming back from injury. Just play 10, whatever it was. But everybody else's game raised 10% seeing her name on the team sheet, and so Sophie probably, and even the other girl I mentioned in a minute. But Sophie, she was coming to the end of her rugby, if you like. Work was taken over, and getting qualified for what she's doing now, and that side of it. And that's important. It's an amateur sport at our level, and I know that. And I tell the players now, we don't pay your bills, we don't pay your mortgage, and we have to accept that. And Sophie was a very, very good player, and definitely could have pushed on. And actually, one of her right-hand women was a girl called Charlie Morgan, and Charlie stayed at Pompey. She's represented the Army quite a few times now, with full honours. Charlie was a brilliant number 9, but could also, I think she's kicking it out the back row every so often now, and could play 10 for us. Didn't like it, but Charlie was she's a paramedic now, but she could have made it, and I think it was again. I think I wrote down, for both of these guys, it was the opportunities for women to find themselves. Nowadays, they were on the cusp of. At one time, you could almost walk into it wasn't Premiership, it was like Championship 1, if you like. You could almost not walk into a side. I'm not taking it away from that, but the pool wasn't as big. Whereas nowadays, because they got rid of their development teams in the women's Premiership, the Championship 1 got more saturated. So it was difficult. You had to push harder to get further up. But both of those had the attributes to absolutely fly. I'm sure of it.
So, what season would that have roughly been that they were there or thereabouts where they could have? Because
so I picked them up.
Only been...
So 7 years ago, I started with the Valkyries, and I think they were both there then. I think we went up in 20. Mm-hmm. So the season before that, I was unbeaten. So that might have been the 1920 or 1819. So you could argue that they were probably at their peak then, if you like.
Yeah. So that was probably a season or two just before the Prem 15s that sort of come in.
Yeah.
But probably a bit too late for the whole development piece to make it as a pro and make it as a viable sort of actual full-time job as well. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
Well, also, I'm not going to. I hope I'm not being rude to them, and I can't remember how old they are. I mean, Sophie's certainly north of 30, and I'm sure Charlie's there or there. So they're not getting picked up as a development age, and to be able to, you do well to. So we were national champ 1, so that's tier 4. Winning that going into tier 3, the jump. I mean, I made a few notes about. The jump from the lowest league to 2 leagues above is huge, and then the jump from Champ 2, which is kind of like we got relegated from that in my last year, but the jump from Champ 2 to Premiership is only 2 leagues, but it's the gulf is huge. You're talking about playing. You're playing international players. You're playing ex international players. These girls are playing or training, not necessarily week in week out, but they're training with international players and international level coaches. And so we were. It was a few years too far back for them, really. But they would have made it all day long.
So I've said this on a couple of pods as well. They're probably the players that were lost to the system that was created too late because there wasn't a development path earlier on to make that sort of progression. To probably been lost to the way the system's not been set up early enough. And we could probably go back years and years, and as you said, just lads from your era that you don't get that didn't get the opportunity because it wasn't a professional game. Because rugby's only been professional for 30 years at a men's level, it'd probably quite amazing to go back and see how many players that probably missed out and what teams could have been like.
I'll tell you now. I went to a naval boarding school, and it didn't go against the trend, but they always say everyone came from private schools, and I only know one guy who's older than me. One guy made England B back in the late 80s. Yeah, and whereas now I think the pathway for the men set up. I know they're changing it again this year, I think, but the pathway is established and recognised. And senior clubs are picking them up and are helping them through, and I think that the pathways sort of go lower than the Premiership in the men's setup. So you will find Championship clubs, and even that one clubs have got at least some sort of recognised pathway. Whereas what we're saying, sort of men's setup's 30 years old. The women are 20 plus years behind them. 25 years maybe behind them. So it's getting better, and I have seen it firsthand how a good club with a good pathway internally can help progression, but also feeder clubs maybe. I'm not sure I like that so much, but we were never one to hold a player back, and you shouldn't. They need to be picked up in the right way. And you're right. If our generation or our era, how many missed out because they weren't picked up in that way because clubs couldn't take a punt on them almost.
It happens in football a lot as well, though, don't they? Like the top club will go and sign them and then loan them back for a season or two to the club that they come from to give them that chance to develop. And I don't think that's always done within rugby. When I was speaking to Liam though the other week, he said that a lot of the men's game they've got a program where the Prem players their entry level youth system will go to say a Nat 2 for a season. Then the next year up, their graduates will go to Nat 1, and then there is a bit of a path that they've generated. But if you don't go and have a good season at your Nat 2 team, does that mean you're lost to the system? Do you just get thrown by the wayside? Or because not every player becomes at their peak at the same time. Just because they've been picked up by academy doesn't mean that it takes them another 5 or 6 years to get what I'd probably say like a dad's strength. Do you know what? Like it's weird. Like you get to a certain point in your life and you've got a certain level of natural strength that you didn't have before, and it changes you as a player and everything like that. Some lads don't develop in that same path. It does take them a bit longer, and then they're able to go and play their game.
Yeah, I think the thing as well is keeping them interested. It's like that it then become disillusioned. So you're a Premiership rugby side and you release 6, 7, 8 academy players. They've just gone from being representing potentially a Premiership side at an academy level. They get dropped. If they don't get picked up by, at what level do they get picked up from to think, oh, do you know what? This is still a good level. I'm still playing competitive rugby. And as you say, you might a lad at 20 or whatever might get dropped from an academy, but he might be a superstar at Pompey's level. But actually, is he ever going to? Is that pathway back up ever going to be there for him? I don't mean coming down, but like even going to a Nat 1, Nat 2 club. Is that path ever going to be there for him to go back? And I think that needs to be looked at.
And unless that club that he goes to's got a clear plan to get to the Championship or above, because they're not going to get to the Premiership because the RFU are stuck in their ways. They're archaic. They don't want any more than the old guard. That's the promised land. They're protected.
Can I come in on you really quickly? Sorry, it's a really interesting point. I want to know your point from it. Is if they didn't ring fence it and they allowed the likes of Ealing, Cornish Pirates, Doncaster, whoever it is, if there was a promotion and relegation with established clubs, clubs that are financially viable, wouldn't that make it more exciting?
100%. Like Newcastle, they finished with 4 points this season or something stupid like that. Gloucester getting beaten by 80 odd points. It's a disgrace to the league. Like they're on about. I saw something else today. They're on about rebranding it slightly, but it's the same dog shit with a little bit more fucking glitter on it. It's crap. It's not going to improve. Anyway, it's not. And it just this stupid idea that Ealing doesn't have a big enough ground. They're never going to get into the position to have a bigger ground because they can't bring any more in at the Championship level. You've got Doncaster. It's good enough for them to hold women's rugby there for the England game, but not good enough for them to get into the Premiership. You've got Sale that's stuck in the arse end of nowhere. You've got Newcastle in the arse end of nowhere. The RFU are stuck in their own little bubble that they want their own little bit and who they want in there. The rest of them can die. That's pretty much my opinion of what Premiership rugby is now. They think that's it. They can go sign the marquee players. The rest of it below, leave it to rot. They don't give a fuck, to be honest. And that's my opinion. And that's why I started this pod, because I just can't see them opening the door to anything else. And while you've still got Bill Beaumont in charge, and on top of the fucking World Rugby doing whatever he wants, the game's going to disappear at this rate, and it'll be him single-handedly with his hand on the murder weapon.
Yeah, we have to hope that there's some forward thinking Mavericks might be a bit pushing it, but you know what I mean? I mean, what I was going to use was the old football analogy. At least the Premiership turned around to Luton and said, right, you've got to do a few things, but you are going to have your stadium in the middle of people's houses and you're going to be in the Premiership. And all you got to do is to Ealing is say, look, you're not going to be able to, we understand you can't increase the numbers. There's a couple of safety measures we need you to have a look at. And yes, you've earned your place at the table. And then they get a year, they get a season, but they have to show they've got to have a business model in place. There's no good them signing 10 superstar players, get relegated and can't afford them. That's not a good model. And there's no parachute payments as such.
No.
But it would give them that opportunity. And I just think at the moment, as you said, Newcastle kick about at the bottom. Why don't you give somebody else a chance?
Well, obviously, Jersey went bust, so they've now ring-fenced the championship for this season, which Cowdy or Cambridgeshire are down around that bottom rung. Are they probably good enough for the championship? Maybe, maybe not. They've now got another season. Are they really going to push on before the relegation piece comes back in next year? Ealing, are they going to win the title again next year? Is anyone else going to compete? Hopefully, they can make it. Coventry have had a really good season. Doncaster have had a really good season. So it's been a good top end of the championship. Nobody's going to have an interest in that if it doesn't end anywhere. Like if you've got the same 10 teams that can't fund their own clubs, I reckon give it another year or 2 years and we'll be down to 8 teams in that Premiership because at least 2 would have dropped by the wayside.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to a mate even a couple of years ago before Wasps, and he had his finger on the pulse a little bit before Wasps went and before Irish went. He said, "Mate, there are majority of the Prem sides are teetering on financial ruin, and they need the money, the TV money, to be sustainable." And that's not right. And as you said, somebody's got to have a look at this somewhere and say, what's going on. And it's I understand with the women's side of it, why they ring fence it, not permanently, but they've got to protect this asset that they've created, I suppose. But even then, Worcester went by the wayside and Wasps went by the wayside. So it doesn't
Durham,
make it
did Durham
immortal.
Drop out as well? Did Durham drop
no,
off?
No. I tell you what, it was a side.
Darlington.
Darlington, wasn't it? Yeah, DMP, wasn't it? Darlington Motor Park. Yeah, but
so they dropped off.
And they took the decision to drop out, and I think that they even went further down. But you've got the likes of Lichfield have combined now. Lichfield have gone with Leicester Tigers. Thurrock are always up there. Cheltenham, I know, won it this year, and they're always pushing. And I mean, I was lucky enough to take our women's team to Cheltenham, and although there's no stand, the setup is really good in terms of pitches, etc. When do they get their opportunity? And I get what they are if you're worried about is are they in that financial position? But every so often, I think you've just got to if we're looking to try and rather than rebrand it, rather than try and sprinkle glitter on it, like you said, just make it a bit more exciting. Don't change the laws or anything. Just give other teams an opportunity to dine at that top table. And you never know.
It will naturally level itself out. If you opened it up to 14 teams or 12 teams or whatever it is, there will be a natural progression. They've obviously got this big sticky plaster that they're putting over next season with every game being made available on TNT Sports or whatever it is. All that's doing is putting another further sticky plaster on it being slightly accessible to the armchair fan. Most fans, you're part of rugby, you watch rugby, they're going to be playing on Saturdays unless they're going to be putting them on midweek in the evening, stuff like that, which is then going to lose fans going to the game, which doesn't matter how big your stadium is if you haven't got anyone in it. So why can't you open the door to Ealing, let them have some of the TV money and Doncaster and stuff like that, and then let them grow and develop? There isn't. It's just so narrow-minded because once you get you've got the Midlands, and then you've got Sales, Manchester, yeah. So you've got the Midlands, and then you've got Newcastle. It's in the arse end of nowhere. If you've got Newcastle, why can't you add the Cornish Pirates? Yeah. Why can't you add Richmond back in? Do you know what I mean? It's just so archaic, and I don't know why. If you think about it's down to money, but that's what, like you said, your other lad that if he drops out of the under-20s, if he drops out of an under-20s in a championship academy system in a Premiership, where would he be able to fall? At least in football, you've got 5 tiers of pretty much professional football. He can still make some money, even in the conference, and still have a path of, if he has a couple of blinding seasons, he might get in the Championship and get his big payday.
Yeah, definitely.
We've not got that safety net. Unless you go abroad and you go and play in France and you put your trade in to their 4 divisions of rugby, which are very good, decent level. They've got international players playing in the 4th tier in French rugby out there. We've got that, but they're never going to see that again. They're never going to get to that height. There's no progression path once you've dropped off that academy conveyor belt. And we're not supporting that by not letting anyone else in the Premiership.
No, and that's another thing. So you imagine like a top four Premiership side drop an academy player, for example. They may well get picked up by one of these these newly promoted sides. You got, let's use Ealing as an example. They get promoted. They pick the lad up. He has 1 season for him as a development player. He could be starting. Within a season, could be starting straight away if that's what the player they need. So I think you're right.
The salary cap it's crippled the league. English Premiership rugby is not able to offer the money to compete with the best players in the world. They're not going to attract the best players in the world to come to the league. At least with the Premier League in football, they've got big clubs, they've got big money, they've got big players. English Premiership rugby hasn't got that option with this salary cap in place. They're all going to France for their retirement, or they've got the option to go to America, to Japan. They're willingly accept all of these players that can still do a job and put their name on the back of a shirt and sell that product. It's just so close-minded as a business. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it's something I think about quite a lot, actually, because you see these guys that go off, and I think that England have got 2 decisions to make. How do we attract these players? And I think that comes down to money, and I think that some of the clubs have had it away a little bit. So I think that comes down to the RFU. They manage themselves as a club, but the RFU that can't let them get away with it. So if you're going to let them increase the salary cap, then there's got to be clauses, etc., written into it. I'm sure there has, but also, so I think that you're right. I think to compete with, I can't believe that the Japanese television market can be on par with ours, let's say. So the money's that coming for some reason, isn't it? So they're getting the South Sea Islanders and the Kiwis all going over there. So there's money for it, and an appetite. And the same in France. I know it's really big over there, but so they're doing something right because they're getting the superstars going over there now. And it's not even for a payday, like you said. Some of the England boys that are leaving now, they're going over there potentially in their prime. And the other thing for me is this selection of, player goes to play abroad and they can't be selected for their country. I think that somebody somewhere just needs to take their blinkers off. And you let somebody, like with modern technology, and with I'm not saying we've got loads and loads of recruiters or like in football, they go and send their agents or talent scouts around. I know we haven't got that set up, but with modern technology nowadays, I'm seeing all our. We got VO at Portsmouth like a lot of other clubs have. I'm not saying that's out and out what you want, but I'm sure if you want a video reel of an individual player, they're put together nowadays. We're getting CVs sent over now with show reels of like a 20-year-old lad. I can't believe that we can't send these players away with our blessing, and we can have them coming back there playing with superstar players from all around the world, and then they can come back and bring some of that back to the England setup.
And that's the thing. They're going to go and play with better players. They're going to go and learn new things. They're going to bring bits back. Most coaches speak to each other. As long as they know they're doing exactly what's instructed to do, there is no reason. But like going to the Japanese stuff, a lot of the Japanese clubs are actually funded by businesses. So you've got Toyota and stuff like that. They're all sort of fund around that because they want that brand, and which is brilliant to see because they buy into it, they understand it, and they actually send scouts to the South Sea Islands and stuff like that. They've got scouts over there, and we start picking the kids up from the age of 8 now. So they've got a big plan of what they do and how they set up, so they know exactly what they've got to do. They go and pick them up. A lot of these islanders, even Tonga, I think I was listening to the Fakatawa podcast on by the Journeyman Co the other week, and they were saying that he was 8 hours away from the mainland in Tonga. So he didn't even feel part of Tonga. So never planned on playing for Tonga because it was never that close. It was 8 hours away. And he was one of the first ones to sort of be picked up and brought out through the system and go to France and stuff. But a lot of that was through links with family members. But now the Japanese clubs actually have got scouts on these islands going around picking up kids from the age of 8 or 9 and getting them over to Japan so they're ready with the residency rules. So
and that's the
they've
worry.
Got the idea, and we haven't got that.
Yeah, and that's the worry. We were a top nation for attracting people, and people still do want to come over, and they recognise the Premiership has been a challenging league. But we're getting left we're getting left behind by Japan and France, and other nations will overtake us as well. And before you know it, we'll be the ones that wondering why we're putting out a second-rate international side. Because everyone's going away. And again, I don't want it to come back to money, but these lads are putting themselves on the line for a relatively short career.
Correct.
Why don't they have a few years in the Prem, and then arguably in their peak they're going off getting paid X amount of times more.
It's like Lewis Rees-Zammit disappearing off to the NFL. He's going to get paid very well for a few years. Fair play to him. Go get it done. In 5 years, you could still come back and tear up rugby because nothing would have changed.
Well, if you imagine if he has a couple of years over there and it doesn't quite work out, so he's a bit part player or whatever. He'll come back to France or Japan, go rip the backside out of that, earning a decent wedge, set himself up for life, and then come back to England or Wales and still get still be in time to get international caps.
He could stay in America. So the American system rugby over there as well. They're paying them. They've got a lot of players going over there in their heyday. So there's no reason the money's not in the pocket there as well. So
they've got. I think they've got the next. Have they got not the next World
2031.
Cup? Well,
2031. 2031.
So I look at a few of the roles that are coming up in Canada and America in the university systems, and you look at the wages they're looking to pay the coaches. It's it pales us into insignificance, and they want to be a shining light. Obviously, they want to do well in their own backyard. So it's you're right. You can just see that in the next few years, America and Canada don't do it by halves. They'll plow a load of money into it, and it will be the next place to go.
And then you've got the likes of India as well. So I've got a lad that I'm speaking to that's coming on the pod in a few weeks' time.
I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah. So he was saying there's 28 provinces within India. And they all come together for like a national selection. So obviously I don't want to give away all the juicy bits before, but they've obviously got 1.2 billion people within the player pool. Their sevens game is what they're trying to bring through and really push them into it. So in a few weeks' time when that pod comes out, it's going to be really interesting because they've got really big plans over there. How was the progression of women's rugby during your tenure then? Obviously, as we sort of touched on it lightly, was it got to a point where it was just a steady building blocks and then it accelerated? Or was it one day you turned up and next thing it was all the big thing that now everyone's showing as part of it and the RFU are using it as another blinker for their deficiencies on other departments?
I think that it was the start of the televising of like the Red Roses games, even on YouTube or whatever it might have been. I think that started switching people onto it.
Yeah. Was that when they made it onto BBC One? Because obviously it used to be on BBC Two, but nobody ever really knew about.
I think it was just even when it was on BBC Two to start with, but then it obviously hit years gone by. It was just on YouTube. It wasn't even on terrestrial TV. Yeah, hitting that. There was this girl can the Inner Warrior series. They were really providing the momentum, and I think that the success of the Red Roses was starting to sort of switch people onto it. So the younger generation was kind of like, I can do this. Why isn't my school putting it on? And they were the players themselves weren't afraid to have a voice. I think the RFU did recognise that, and I think that talking to some of the development officers, the regional officers that I was dealing with at the time, we were pushing against sort of like a half-open door. So if you've got ideas, you come to us with them, and if it works, then we'll roll it out. And we even had that. There's funding for it. What do you want to do? So I think that there was kind of like a bit of a swell of a few different areas. I think that the international and Premiership players were a little bit more accessible than the men, just because they were there was a smaller pool of them. You were going to go and watch Quins play at Guildford at Surrey Sport Park, where you park up and walk in. It's not a stadium. You can just, so it was a little bit, it was a bit more accessible, I suppose. Whereas we want it to be big stadiums and everything. Of course we do. But even at local level, I think that there was an uptake, especially around locally to us. There's a fair few women's teams, but we are fairly spread out. So we're not fishing from the same pond kind of thing. It's kind of like there were enough to go round, and then Portsmouth were the side that were doing well, Havant are doing well at the moment. Trojans have historically always done well and produced some pretty top class players. But for us, it was kind of like we were lucky. We hit a time really where I think that we tapped into the Navy at a time where they were trying to put more effort into their inter-service matches. This was just pre them going to Twickenham. So the few years before that, we had quite a few there. We recognised that the university was the big thing for us was getting a second team out. And they didn't have to go in the league. We just wanted them to play 6 or 7 games a season because we had too many players for the first team, and we didn't have enough players for a second team. So our remit was that let's get another team out, and then they're playing rugby. It didn't matter if it was competitive or tennis sides. Yeah. We wanted more than that, and it's just a success breeds success a little bit. And we were lucky winning we won the National Junior Cup. We went a season unbeaten, and I'm really proud of our achievements. But it's 20 years gone by. They start, the foundations were set 20 years or more ago. So we're only helping building that, and we're only part of their kind of fabric, if you like. But you've got to push your names out there, and getting us into like Rugby World magazine or in the news. I mean, Kev Ricketts, God rest his soul, was a massive champion for us. And every week, Sunday night, phone me up. How did you get on this week? And suddenly you're in the media a little bit, and so it was really good. But I think that we were still on the coattails of what the international players were doing, and the creation of the Women's Premier League.
What the women's game's done is phenomenal. What the Red Roses have done and been able to push it forward. Do you think, or do you fear that is now the next cash cow for the RFU? Obviously, they've managed to fill up Twickers the other week at reasonable prices. They're 30 odd quid a ticket, something like that. Wasn't mega dollar. Still accessible for most. Are they going to use that as the next cash cow for the Hooray Henrys paying 80, 90 quid because their mate's got a prawn sarnie down at Twickers for that weekend?
So I'll be honest with you. I've been there. I haven't been there when it's been sellout yet. I've been to quite a few of the Red Roses games, and they've had 50 plus thousand people there, and we've paid as little as £20 for me and £5 for my daughter, and I went to Twickenham to watch the men. I used to pay 30 quid a pop for that, and you're right, paying 90, 100, 150 quid. So we go and watch. We still go to Twickenham. We get to see an international game. We've just booked tickets. We've just booked tickets for the New Zealand game in September. But my fear is that they're not selling it out regularly for the women's game, and I think they should be doing that first before they ever consider, putting the money up. Because their dream, the RFU's dream for me, in my opinion, is that next year England play New Zealand or France in the final of the World Cup, and it's a sellout. Yeah. And then that's when they'll be, right, women have sold this out now. We're going to start putting the prices up. And I think that I told you earlier on that the women's game is 25 years behind the men's commercially, even more maybe. And you can see that with a number of times the sponsorships changed for the Premiership. And that is my fear. And I don't, it'll come a time when they'll have to. There'll come a time when it's a necessity, but all the time it's not. And if you're not filling it up yet, then I think you should leave well alone for the time being.
I'm fully on board for it to go up if it goes back into the game, if it goes back into the system to generate more players to come through and for more leagues and stuff like that. I think a lot of rugby fans will willingly pay that 20, 30 quid extra to make it accessible and improve that. the cynic in me knows that that's not going to happen. They're not going to put the money back in the system. It's just
and maybe that's what maybe that's what my push.
Overheads.
Yeah, maybe that's what my pushback is then, Carl. Is that call me an old cynic, but I'd rather them fill it up at the prices they're charging now than. And that's talking about accessibility. Those people that they're taking to watch now. My mate's daughter we take with us. She's playing at Portsmouth. She's 10 years old. That's accessible to her. You make that ticket, or people that can't afford it. You suddenly make it they can't afford it, then you're taking that away from them before they've even filled it up. And that's a fear. If they're open and honest about it, we're putting it up and declare it. X amount of percentages going back to grassroots. And don't make it just a token gesture. They're getting rid of development officers that are doing so much work on the ground to make it easy for coaches to, for material and coaching equipment, and they're getting rid of them because and using COVID in my mind as an excuse because they weren't. I think a mate of mine said to me, I think every time Twickenham doesn't put a game on, or every time they put a game on, they make 10 million quid. So if they're not putting a game on, they lose 10 million quid. Well, that's great, but if you're not filling the stadium, then you're not. What do you charge 3 times the amount and have a third amount of people in there? I don't know. It's not for me, I'm afraid.
How can you be running a business and losing 10 million quid every time? Apparently, and that's exactly what we got to do because nobody else is calling it out. A lot of people are rolling over, having their tummy tickled, and think that they're going to get away with the RFU running the beautiful game into the ground. I might be wrong, but I'd rather than be transparent and say that the price is going up and an extra 10% or whatever it might be is being ploughed back into grassroots. And you go, do you know what? I'm all up for supporting that. Here's my extra 10, 15, £20. So I appreciate what you're saying. I think Pompey did the same. So Pompey Football Club, they did it as well. So they gave you an option. If you bought a match ticket, you could donate an extra 10% to the academy side. So they just put it on the thing. You didn't have to pick it. If you wanted to donate a bit extra, click the button. You donated that. You bought your ticket for your game, and you gave a little bit extra to the academy, so you knew exactly where it was going. So that was a separate pot. If RFU want to look at doing stuff like that, just something's got to happen. So they clearly can't fund it themselves. They're in, as you said, if they're cutting development officers, they're cutting other parts to support the wider game and the growth. Rugby is such a big community internally. We're very stuck within our own little bubble, though. We obviously, I said earlier on in the first pod, we think we're bigger than we are. But a lot of people are willing to put their hand in their pocket to support the bigger cause. Some people have to be nudged in that direction. So if the RFU said, tick this box and you pay an extra £5, but it goes to Molly down in Sidmouth at 5 that's going to be able to get into the game of rugby. People will be clicking that button more times you get a chance to pay for a normal ticket. And it's not advertised enough. We don't show what it gives back as well. Just because they tick that button, they don't go and see what it's added on. Rugby seems to be like, oh, we've donated this, but we don't show you what the end product is. We're still very inept at marketing. More worried about videos on Instagram of people throwing a ball around a couple of times. I think that's brilliant for short clips and bits in between, but we've got to go and see what is actually happening on the ground and what I think it's how many people are coming through.
And that's it. And then, but that builds on what it. I always say to our club, it's always easier to get £10, £100 sponsors than it is to get £1,000 sponsor. So it must be easier for us to get 80,000 people. I'm not saying 80,000 people are going to all click it, but 10,000 people click 50p or whatever it might be, and then the RFU then, through your donations, we've been able to provide X. Sidmouth under 15s, or Sidmouth under 5s have now got a set of sponsored match balls or whatever it might be. And I know it does go on. I know them because every so often, you put in for a grant, you get it or whatever. But you just hit the nail on the head. Is actually if they're a little bit more humble about it and they present it in such a manner, then I think that you're going to find that there actually are some people out there that are a bit more philanthropic and go, do you know what? I can afford to. I've had a lucky good year or whatever it might be. I can put in a bit more, and that's how you get your prawn sandwich eaters. Not giving them blinking corporate tickets and boxes. Show them what that money's used for.
Exactly that, and they've got a big screen at Twickers. They've got all of those bits. So the people that do go regularly, that see that, they buy the ticket or they buy in advance, that money's already, it's on the big screen. You see it and you sit there and you think, actually,
Yeah, brilliant.
I was part of that. And we don't get that feel-good factor in rugby as much. It's very much, like I was speaking to Polly in the second pod, and he obviously head coach there. Ian White is the chairman, and he has to deal with it. He said about the grants and that. I said, is it literally you've got to be there at the right time? You've got up on one leg and you've got to click the right button and make sure you. He's like, sometimes it's just the email comes in, you've got to click the right link at the right time. He said, we don't get told what's available. Well, at the start of the year, right, this is what's available. Can you put a business case together? Because it is a business, don't get me wrong. Everyone needs to make a case or say, actually, these 5 clubs have all put in a good case. There's 50 grand. Can't pick one of them. We're going to pick all 5 of them, give them 10 grand a piece. And it's just not accessible. It's just English nature as well, though. And at most councils, they make it impossible to reach. But then when they get to the end of the budget, they'll prefer to dig a road up because they've got to spend the budget rather than putting it back into something that's going to keep kids off the street.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leading on to obviously the player pool that's available in the region. Are Pompey a team that should be higher up the leagues with the player pool that's available on the Portsea Island and in the surrounding areas? Obviously, is this going back to the funding piece, or is there something else that's potentially happened at Portsmouth that doesn't allow the club to exploit? Because Portsmouth Football Club, biggest club in Hampshire, no qualms about that. Havant up the road are doing a lot bigger than Portsmouth Rugby Club. Is there some? Have Portsmouth missed the boat that Hampshire that haven't got on board with, or is there? Obviously, you being a Portsmouth lad through and through the club, through the coaching system, is there something that Portsmouth as a club have missed the boat on?
It's a really difficult one because I'm more than happy to
do you want to be assistant coach for, Mark?
Yeah.
How long you got left?
I'll take my Portsmouth tinted glasses off and say that haven't have clearly done something right. I used to sort of say all the clubs would be doing this locally, and one season Pompey would have a good season, and then Gosport would be up there, and Winchester or whatever, and Havant, whatever it might have been, and then we're all about the same level, but they've just something's clicked up there, and one day I'd love to find out what it is. You could argue that they've suddenly got a pitch that can be used all year round, which is a nice selling point. If you go upstairs in their clubhouse, that's all been completely reinvented, and it's it looks nice, and it's and their marketing and their catering, and everything just seems to be you're ticking the box at the moment and doing it right. And I think that if you can get these things right, you get that bit of a swell and a bit of momentum, and success off the pitch can then breed success on the pitch, and it's sort of like self-fulfilling. So that for me, I think that we should be sort of tapping into Havant's model as best we can. Maybe to decide what aspirations we've got, because I think that depending on how far you go, the level that your club may get to may not reflect on the ambition that the club's got, if that makes sense. And I mean by that, we should at least be a successful London division club. We were up in Nat 2, Nat 1, comfortable there, and I believe the club have got ambition and desire to be back there. I think that once you get above that level and you're talking National League, then I think it's a different dilemma altogether. I think that finances come in low down anyway. The clubs are run as a business, and they have to be, because we run that clubhouse. We've got to pay for it. We've got to maintain it. So there's a business element even at our level. But when you're getting up to contractually signing players, etc., then I think it's different. But in terms of player pool, I'm really proud that we're the city side, and I know US Portsmouth are in the city as well, and I know that we've probably got about 8 clubs that I jotted down, fairly local, and we span quite a few leagues, although some are condensed, but there should be a bit of rugby for everybody. I'd love to say we're a sleeping giant and we're gonna push on, but I think that there'll be a natural glass ceiling, I suppose, but there'll be a level that we could get to. Certainly, we should be aspiring to be pushing a couple of leagues above from where we are now into the London leagues. I think that what's admirable with Petersfield is that they've set their stall out at quite an early stage. They've been building to it. I know some of the coaches and DORs that have been and gone and managers, but it's not. They're not just trying to do this overnight. Stu's been there for a long time, and he's an ambitious guy, and he's definitely set his stall out for where he wants them to be, and he's prepared to go for it. And it's gonna cost them financially and physically and whatever else, but they're prepared to go for it at the moment. And I think that I wish them well. I mean, the thing with Winchester is that they've probably a year or two ahead of Petersfield in terms of that ambition, but it's stalled this year because of Jersey. And now they've got another year of being in that same league, and the danger for them is that Petersfield come up behind them and railroad that promotion again. But for us, I think that if we're going to progress, we need to do it right. But I know the club and I know the chairman really, really well, and it can't be at a cost. It's got to be as self-sustained as we can be, really. And by that, it's going to mean that we will hit a ceiling, because you'll get to a stage where players can go and play for another club, fairly locally, and if they're good enough, they're going to get paid for it. And we're not there.
No, but like when I used to go to Portsmouth, your clubhouse was never full after games. I know I'm probably shooting in the dark here a lot, but there was a period that it was packed, and then there was a real lull when you guys didn't fill out your own clubhouse. We were the sort of the last, like the away teams were the last teams that were still in your clubhouse. And do you think the club lost a little bit of identity for a period and didn't sort of support its own because it was cheaper to go down the spoons down the corner than...
Yeah, you're right. And I think that clubs have to look at that, not just Portsmouth, but all clubs. I think that success breeds... I'll flip it around. From success on the pitch does breed success off of it. If you've got sides doing well, they're going to stay behind and support it. I think that the dynamic has changed about what players potentially want afterwards. So it's we need to try and keep players afterwards, but it might just be for a couple of hours rather than into the night. Which they've got new bar management in now, so they're more attuned to the club. I think. I don't think it's right for me ever to talk badly about previous coaches, but I think there was an element of the club not moving in the right direction, and I think that we lost some players because of that. And I think that potentially we all took it for granted. I came from a very successful era at the club. Bar was packed. We were winning stuff, but also you've got to take those blinkers off and turn around and say. And I think we probably went too far. Like somebody didn't grab hold of it beforehand and say, what can we do to put it right? And it's all well and good throwing these things up, but things cost money. And if we had a free bar after every game, we'd be packed, home and away. But there's got to be other things we can do. And I think that with the management set up, the committee and the coaching set up now, and the players, I think the club's been squeezed a bit more now. And by that, I think we're all sort of like the communication's definitely. The communication goes further up and down through the club now, whereas it might have stopped. It might have stopped within a side, or it might have stopped, from the committee down. Whereas it's definitely more of that. I think that there's a really good feeling at the club at the moment, and that's come from putting more sides out. We've had a fairly successful season, even in as much as not even having to put a walkover for a team this season, being able to fulfil fixtures. And I think that can only be good rolling into this next season.
It's the thing is, some clubs have always lived on the coattails of the past. Portsmouth probably fell into that trap a little bit.
Completely agree.
There was a very good era when that was there, and lads probably still lived on that story rather than making their own mark within the bit. as you said, everything changed on the accessibility of the bar. The bar, if your club's not doing as well as, like, they've changed it down at Gosport. They understand not everyone is going to go and stay there and get battered and then end up in Emma's every sort of Saturday. But it's a stipulation of every game. Just come up for one drink, buy a Coke, have your scran, get on the road. Just show your face. See the supporters. See the people that are willing to stay there, that have stayed there and come down and watch Gosport. Portsmouth got such an amazing setup. You've got the gym. You've got all those access pit. You've got the train that everyone can get in on. You've got a decent car park. You've got the platform is there. It's just it kind of got to a peak and then it's just fell off while everyone was holding on, thinking everyone was carrying on up.
Yeah, and I think taking it for granted. I think it's kind of like, it's all right. We've packed the clubhouse out before. We pack out every week, and the stuff you just said about then, like, when we were vets, one of the stipulations was you couldn't leave before 6, or you paid your little fine. Okay, and nobody really left before 6. I'm driving. Well, you had a couple of Cokes and you stayed because you didn't want to pay your fine. But you're right. But I think that also, I want to sort of like tip my hat a little bit to the volunteers that have come and gone, but also. Having volunteers in the right areas. So at the moment, we've got a couple of really good media guys. We've got people now we're sort of getting right people in the right places that actually sort of know what they're doing, but also know where to seek out the help from. And I don't mean just the social media, but for example, like we've got a bar manager in there now that's run bars, or he's there on behalf of the club rather than running it as an independent business kind of thing. We've got coaches and players that are talking now. We've got a social media set up that are trying to promote, increase the visibility online. And actually it looks eye-catching and looks like people want to be involved in it. So I think that we have to use that and we have to be aware of that and not take it for granted. And I think that's there now, and they're kind of trying to tap into that a little bit. We're trying to get the people that don't play anymore, trying to get them up. What would make you come back to the club for a match day, or what can we do to help you come back to us? Like you said, I'm really proud for it to be the city side. It would be lovely if we were mirroring what the football club were doing, but we could do it. We can have if these small steps would gather steam eventually, and I think we're getting there. We are gathering a bit of pace, and hopefully this season it's another one where we can just push on a little bit more.
Because you've got a new DOR as well, haven't you? Jordan's stepped in there, is that correct?
Yeah, Jordan's had a year. And what I like about Jordan is that he's got a younger perspective on it. He says he's still playing, but I'll be one of the judges of that.
Did he ever play? Did he ever play originally?
It's how he played a good game. I was never going to mention it, but but also what's good is that Jordan took a bit of time out and went to another club, and maybe saw how. Parts of that were run. So he's fresh from playing, if you like, and maybe knows some of the pitfalls that the guys are experiencing. But also he's keen to listen. He was with me for a bit when we coached the Valkyries. He knows that we all want to sort of like support him, but also he's keen to support us, and I think that's really important. And I know you get DORs that are either very playing orientated or might be a little bit sort of off the park orientated, but I think Jordan's really working hard to try and pull all elements together. And I think that will be part of our progress certainly this year.
Fair play to him. It's no easy feat. He's got a little one just arrived as well, hasn't he? So he's got his hands full. He's keeping himself busy there trying to pull it all together.
Absolutely.
It's just one of them. I think Grassroots, a lot of lads dropped off because of COVID. A lot of teams are in rebuild as well. I think that's probably an element of it. I remember going to Portsmouth and ended up playing their 4s, and then there was a lot of clubs. Gosport had the 3s. Those clubs, those extra players fill up the rest of it and fill up the bar usually, because the 3s and the 4s are usually your socials that end up drinking your bar dry. That's kind of gone from the game as well, which I think probably doesn't help a lot of clubs. I think we could carry on for days, Mark, to be honest.
It's good to chat.
It's brilliant to have had you on, mate, and some absolute gems on there as well, mate. So I'm sure we can throw some hand grenades at other people and see if they want to answer the call in as well off the back of this.
Yeah, definitely.
Top man, brilliant. Cheers, Mark. Thanks for your time, mate. Really appreciate it.
No problem. It's my pleasure, Mark. I look forward to it.
Take it easy, pal. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Well, that brings this pod to an end. If you made it this far, I just want to take a moment to thank you for listening right through and express my gratitude for following yet another episode of Rugby Through the Leagues. So in today's episode, we discuss Mark Witcher's rugby journey as a one-club man, then coaching the Portsmouth Valkyries and Hampshire Women's with some amazing results in there with an unbeaten season to throw in the mix as well. Hope you enjoyed the ranting and ramblings about the game as we have a few more ready for next week's pod. We welcome Russell Earnshaw on to discuss his rugby journey from winning the European Cup with Bath to playing for the Barbars and being told he would never be able to play for them again after going on a typical Barbars drinking bender. It's a really great chat about coaching, rugby, self-development. So can't wait to get that one out for everyone to see and hear. Once again, a huge thank you to you all for tuning in. Thank you and goodbye.